Borders is a podcast by the Euranet Plus network about life on the European Union's external borders.
Hello, I'm Giulia Cannizzaro, an Italian journalist for Radio 24, Il Sole 24 Ore. For the Euranet Plus Borders podcast, I traveled to the southern border of the European Union, to Calabria, a region in southern Italy that faces the Mediterranean. On the other side of this relatively narrow channel of water lies North Africa, the point of departure for many migrants. Every year, hundreds of them risk their lives trying to cross this maritime border. Two major shipwrecks just a few miles off the Calabrian coast have shaken its inhabitants. One at Cutro, which occurred on the night of 25th to February 26, 2023, with 54 survivors, 11 missing, and 94 dead. And the more recent one in Roccella Ionica, which occurred on the night of 16th to June 17th, 2024, in which 56 of the 67 people on board lost their lives. Beyond these tragedies, what happens when migrants dock safely in Calabria? How do the locals and migrants live together? What is life actually like in this region? To find out, I went to one of the symbolic places of welcome in Calabria. It is a tiny village nestled in the Calabrian mountains with the Mediterranean Sea visible in the distance. It is called Sant'Alessio d'Aspromonte and has 150 permanent inhabitants, plus around 50 who have fled wars, poverty, and exploitation. Sant'Alessio is not much more than a single street with a small supermarket, a church, a pharmacy, and a town hall, and of course a bar, which is where I start my visit. Caterina, the owner, offers me a warm welcome. Before arriving, I had also made contact with Antonella Tina, the coordinator of the SAI, the reception and integration system for migrants in Sant'Alessio, who is waiting for me there. She offers me a cup of coffee and we have a chat at a small table near the entrance. I ask them about the effectiveness of the SAI and how receptive people are to the program. Before answering, Caterina looks at the bus stop outside the cafe, where some of the young migrants who have come to Sant'Alessio in recent years are waiting. She tells me what she thinks of their presence here.
As far as I'm concerned, we get on well because they are all quiet people I respect. There is a boy, for example, who is a good friend of my son. I have two sons, one 21 years old and one 24. Every now and then he comes to help my son without wanting anything in return. He and my son have struck up a great friendship. From time to time they go to eat a pizza in Reggio, have a drink. So as far as I'm concerned, the project is very positive.
While Caterina is speaking, Annalisa, an agriculture entrepreneur from Sant'Alessio, specializing in organic crops, enters the bar. She tells me how important migrants are in keeping local business, including her own, from dying.
For us, having an apprentice is a precious help because, farms, especially mine, which is organic, are struggling these days. One, Pacom, worked with us until September. We got on very well. He was a polite boy. During working hours, when we'd bring sandwiches for lunch, he'd always wait to eat after he'd finished his work. I never had any problems.
And for Annalisa, these young people are not only a valuable economic resource, but a sign of hope.
I'm going to tell you about Abdu, a little Syrian boy who has integrated very well here in Sant'Alessio. He used to play with the other children, get into mischief in the village, go looking for fruit. When he and his family left for Germany, my children missed him terribly because we live in a town where there are very few children and very few inhabitants. So it's not just rhetoric when I say that when we come back to Sant'Alessio in the evening after a day's work and we see a light on, it's a sign of hope for us. It's nice to see that the community is alive. It doesn't matter whether it's a local or someone from Rwanda or Somalia. It's life.
Sant'Alessio is one of those small Italian villages threatened by the population, and it's hard to get to, even though it's only 20 kilometers from Reggio Calabria, the region's capital. To reach it, you have to take a long mountain road with sharp bends and very narrow stretches of road. Things are about to change, say the locals. With the opening of the new Gallico to Reggio Calabria motorway, getting to Sant'Alessio should be easier and quicker. After coffee, I leave Caterina and Annalisa and go with Antonella to the town hall. The mayor, Francesco Marra, is waiting for me in the small council chamber. We talk about the migrant reception projects underway in Sant'Alessio and the importance of making those who arrive in this small Calabrian municipality feel part of the community. Indeed, as he points out, many houses in this area are empty and ideal for migrants.
Abbiamo una densità di case sfitte, abbandonate.
We have a lot of vacant and abandoned houses, particularly the houses of the Autonomous Housing Institute, which don't belong to anyone. So we're probably going to launch an appeal to see if we can give the opportunity to those of them who would like to start a family, but can't because they can't afford the rent. We'll offer them services at zero cost, with the hope, the commitment, of them living actively in the city for at least 10 years. Why 10 years? Because that's how long a family can have a child and send him or her to school in Sant'Alessio until the 5th year. After that, they can decide to stay here or follow another path, depending on the child's aspirations.
The history of humanity is made up of migrations, and we Italians must remember this more than anyone else, according to the mayor.
Let's not forget that the Italian people were one of the first migratory peoples in the world, not only in Europe, but throughout the world. We need only recall the emigration of Italians to Argentina, to America, and wherever we went, we were respected and gave the best of ourselves.
Marra also comments on the recent agreement on migrants between Italy and Albania, under which Italy would transfer up to 36,000 asylum seekers to Albanian detention centers each year, a program that would cost at least 650 million euros over 5 years. Judges, however, have ruled against their detention in this non-EU country.
Migrants are
not parcels that are picked up and taken away to Albania and then brought back here because a judge has decided that this parcel should be left in Italy after all. These are people who must be respected as such, as individuals. It was really a mistake on the part of central government. We didn't need Albania, we just needed to invest in the national territory to create more structures, to create the right conditions for integration, to give them the chance to be safe and to start an education in order to include them in the world of work. Italy badly needs them. They have professional skills that can no longer be found here. A training course would give these people economic dignity. There's no point in squandering money on Albania or signing agreements with governments that aren't very secure.
He believes that the solution is not to palm migrants off to other countries, but to create places of welcome and, above all, integration, like they have done in Sant'Alessio. We leave the town hall and I continue chatting with Antonella, who is my guide on this trip around Sant'Alessio. She tells me stories and anecdotes about the work in the town. I ask her to describe Sant'Alessio's model of welcome and integration.
Su Sant'Alessio insistono da ben 10 anni.
In Sant'Alessio, there have been 2 projects going on for a good 10 years. We have the SAI project, in other words, the Reception and Integration System, an ordinary structure that welcomes families, single parents and single men, and also a project involving the reception of people with specific vulnerabilities, such as those with physical or mental issues. We currently have 35 active places in Sant'Alessio.
What nationalities are predominantly accommodated in Sant'Alessio?
Abbiamo appunto tunisini.
We have Tunisians, Nigerians, Egyptians, Ivorians. We also have an Indian family, a Sudanese family of 5, a mother with 4 children, and a Ukrainian citizen.
We meet 2 of them as they carry out activities in the rooms that the local council has made available for the second project Antonella mentioned. They are 2 women, 2 mothers. They speak very little Italian, but they are studying it and say, hello, thank you, nice to meet you. They want to share their story and courageously sit down in front of our cameras. The first to speak is Warda, a 43-year-old from Tunisia. After crossing the Mediterranean, she arrived in Lampedusa before being transferred a few kilometers further on to Calabria. The memory of her crossing is still vivid in Warda's mind, and she tells us about it with tear-filled eyes.
The boat set off from Sfax in Tunisia and arrived in Lampedusa. The journey took 24 hours, but on the way from Tunisia to Italy, the boat ran out of petrol and we found ourselves in the middle of the sea without any fuel. Thanks to the Italian Coast Guard, we were able to get to safety. Otherwise, we would have ended up at the bottom of the sea.
You were then transferred from Lampedusa to Sant'Alessio. What happened next?
I've been welcomed here at Sant'Alessio, where I'm supported by a team because I have a health problem. In the meantime, I'm continuing my studies to learn the language, and I'm working so that I can make an economic contribution to my family back home because I have a responsibility towards them. I'd also like to be able to rent a house and continue my life here once the host project is over.
Next is the story of Iman, aged 44, who also came from Sfax in Tunisia. She has 4 children, but only brought 3 of them with her. Her adult son remained in Tunisia. She too tells us how she came to Sant'Alessio, where she was able to find the help she needed, above all for her daughter.
I arrived in SFX, and we waited there for 12 days before then we left. We were also at sea for 24 hours and then arrived in Lampedusa, where we stayed for 8 days. I arrived in Italy with my children, all minors, including a daughter with Down's syndrome. They asked me to wait and be patient, telling me they would put me in a project where I could receive more attention and care, given my daughter's situation. I waited, and after a while, from Sicily, I was transferred here to Sant'Alessio.
Iman is not yet working, but has started learning Italian to accelerate her integration into the community in the hope of giving her children a future here. These women's stories contain so much pain that they can be difficult to hear, even for those who, like Antonella, listen to them every day. One story in particular has had a profound effect on the coordinator, who even years later cannot contain her emotion when she recounts it.
Ne racconto una che ho particolarmente a cuore.
I'm going to share one story that is particularly close to my heart. It involves a young Nigerian girl who came to Sant'Alessio from another project in Campobasso. We took her into the shelter project for vulnerable people because unfortunately she had a tumour. We supported her so that she could receive treatment, so that she could undergo therapy, and in the meantime, she became pregnant. She was seen at Catanzaro Hospital. We accompanied her, and the doctors rightly said that in her state of health, it was not advisable to continue with the pregnancy. However, she was very religious and said that she wanted to continue the pregnancy because she thought that if God had sent it to her, it meant that she should carry it to term. And so she did. But unfortunately, there's good news and bad news. The child was born, a beautiful child, Joyce, who is now 2.5 years old. She was born here. I'm trying not to cry. But unfortunately, her mum passed away. I was very attached to the little girl. The whole team was very attached. The local people too. People wanted to look after the little girl, for example, when her mother had to go for treatment or when she was at home but wasn't feeling well.
Today, little Joyce is doing well. Although she lives with her father in another town, contact between her and Antonella has never ceased. The spirit of Sant'Alessio is summed up by an inscription on the town hall's facade, which reads, "Inclusion creates roots and links." This message also guides Antonella in her work. Like many of her fellow locals in this village at the edge of Italy, she was ready to leave her hometown to look for work elsewhere. But the migrant reception system that was put in place enabled her to stay here, in the mountains, where she was born and raised. So, Antonella, you believe that the migrants have given you a chance to stay in the village?
Yes, these projects have also enabled young people in the region, like me, not to leave their community because of a lack of job opportunities. A number of projects have been set up over the years. Today, out of 15 employees and collaborators, 5 are from Sant'Alessio, all with regular contracts. This has enabled us, and this is no mean feat, in my opinion, to stay in Sant'Alessio.
Walking through the narrow streets of Sant'Alessio d'Aspromonte, on the slopes of the Aspromonte, I have seen for myself how successfully the local population coexists with the migrants who arrive here from across the Med. In talking to those who are welcomed and those doing the welcoming, I have learned that migration can be a collective opportunity for rebirth, instead of simply a problem to be solved. That's all from me today. The only thing that remains is for me to thank the locals and migrants who agreed to share their stories.